so great that you do these videos because, man, I wish I had something like this years ago when I was coming up through the system. Would have
Yeah,
saved me so much time and frustration.
Hola amigos de México, Puerto Vallarta. La lección de hoy es una entrevista sobre, which is basically 5 skills to make you a better PD quicker and faster than somebody else. So let's not waste any time, let's get into it right now. Hey Buckaroos, today is going to be the first of a bunch of different lessons as I catch up with friends of mine and people who have done specific formats, and I'm going to get them to talk about their specific format. I thought that would help you a lot if you're just starting out, or if you're moving from one format to another that you're not real familiar with. Maybe get a little bit of insight into that type of audience and maybe things that you should be thinking about. Our first guest is Dave Farough. And Dave has been a jock, Dave has been a PD, obviously that's why he's on here now. He's been a national PD for the Chorus Chain, and the Chorus Chain is a pretty large chain in Canada. It's one of the majors, and they mainly specialize in rock and alternative and classic rock, those type of stations. So Dave's done that. Dave has also been a general manager, he's been a consultant, he's doing consulting now, he's into podcasting, he's in a whole bunch of different things. So we're going to talk to Dave, and let's go do that now. We caught up with him in Toronto before we left, and this is how it went.
This is so great that you do these videos because, man, I wish I had something like this years ago when I was coming up through the system. It would have saved me so much time and frustration. Yes.
So we're going to talk about radio, and I really wanted to explore, I'm going through some sessions, and you're going to be the first one, where I'm having people who have programmed in different types of formats. You being alternative, you've had a hand in that, and we're very good at it, had good numbers and everything, which is kind of what matters, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to go through that, and you also had 5 or 10 things that every PD should know that would guarantee you success. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, these are things that if you can figure out how to execute these, I think you will not only be successful, but like I said earlier, you'll save yourself a lot of time and a lot of frustration. These are things I wish I knew when I was first becoming a program director.
Yeah, cool. All right, we'll go through those. You're all over the net. Like, there's a lot of stuff about you, which was great. And so I read pretty much everything.
Some of it is even flattering.
Yeah, a lot of it was actually flattering, reading about your Q days out there. Let's talk about Q for just a second. Because I'm ignorant of this particular thing. I remember seeing you at Q, but I never really heard Q in Victoria when you're the PD out there for over a decade, right?
It's like, it was 13 years.
Yeah. So what was the format that, I'm assuming it was rock.
Here's what I loved about that radio station. We had an independent owner who kind of gave us the keys and said, do what you think you need to do to be successful.
Yeah.
And for us, we weren't even thinking about revenue so much. We were just thinking if we can get a few listeners, that's success. And when we launched that thing, Pat, it was what I would call a wide classic hit station way before there was such a thing as Bob or Jack or any of those things. We were playing everything from Stevie Wonder to Aerosmith when we first launched. Because we didn't really know. We didn't have research. We didn't have anybody, consultants. We didn't have any of that stuff telling us what we should do. So we just thought, well, let's play a bit of everything and see what the audience reaction is. Yeah. See what they like and what they don't.
Who picked the music there? Was it you or the music director?
It was Dave Gadet, who was the original music director. And Dave is now teaching marketing at SAIT.
For most of the songs, did you sort of like defer to his judgment?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where him and I got together for a few beers about 6 months into the launch of the radio station. I said, Dave, I don't want to offend you, but like I think some of the things we're playing are a little too fringy. Mm-hmm. And I'm not. Yeah. Maybe we need to tighten things up just to be a little more focused so people actually know what we are. We tightened it up a little bit, but we still kept the interest.
I really believe that when somebody's programming a radio station, I might have gotten this from being at CK with Rosalie Tromley, who is an amazing music director, and everybody pretty much deferred to Rosie. Like we said, her ears were amazing. But to me, it seems like one person really needs to take the lead on the music, and it's one person's taste because, and this is really important, I think, because the one person's taste almost everybody has a musical taste that is wider than any format. Absolutely. You know, I mean, nobody's like, I'm only rock, I'm only alternative. They'll bleed over into other things. And if they're doing a format, I think whatever in their ear bleeds over in, usually it fits. A perfect example of that is the Garth channel. I don't know if you ever heard the Garth channel on Sirius.
No.
A lot of it is country, but he's playing Katy Perry. He's playing Nickelback.
Yeah.
But when you sit and listen to it, you go like, you know what? That Katy Perry song, followed by these two country songs, followed by Nickelback, they fit together totally perfectly because it's his musical taste, and he's
And
automatically got the boundaries going.
and he's providing context to
Yes,
why he's
yes.
playing that. And that's what we always did at the Q. We were live 24/7. We weren't voice tracked. We had live announcers who were passionate about the music and could explain why we're playing this.
I would have thought, having been a PD and having go from one format to another format, what went through your mind and how was that transition going to take over a heritage alternative radio station? I mean, heritage, I mean, when you got there, what, in 2001, I think it was,
Yeah,
somewhere in there?
yeah,
And it had been on the air probably since what, 1983?
yeah.
As an old, I mean, you're going in, it's like, don't touch the jewel type thing, I would assume.
Oh,
So what went through your mind and all that?
you know what the best thing that happened to me in that situation was that I didn't grow up in Toronto and I
Hmm.
wasn't tied to the heritage of the station. Otherwise, I think I would have been handcuffed and I would have been too nervous to make any adjustments. I just knew that it was an alternative radio station that was struggling.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, how am I going to get the credibility of the staff coming from the number 14 market in the country to the number one market, running one of the classic or most well-known radio stations in North America? How am I ever going to win over the staff? But then it just kind of dawned on me that what made us successful in Victoria was that we never took ourselves too seriously. We had fun, we pushed the envelope a little bit in the right way, and we
Hmm.
created spontaneous, compelling, entertaining radio. And there's got to be people in Toronto that want to hear entertaining radio that has fun. So I'm just going to put all of those attributes into this station and see what happens. Honestly, and this is to no fault of anyone that was there at the time, because they were all wonderful people. They are wonderful people. But when I first listened to The Edge in February of 2001, when I arrived, it was dark and hard and almost unlistenable. If we can just lighten things up a bit and brighten things up, I think we have a chance to get a larger audience. I think we can actually bring not just more men, but some women to the party too, and actually build some kind of an adult audience.
Hmm.
Humble and Fred were doing a good morning show at the time. Humble and Fred were good and they were having fun. But after 9 o'clock, it just became really dark.
Would you say that that audience was the same or noticeably different from other audiences that you have encountered? An alternative, a typical alternative, and I don't mean demographics, just a typical alternative listener.
Yes, they were different. They are extremely passionate. They are extremely knowledgeable about the
Hmm.
music. They'll catch you. If you make a mistake on air or if any one of the personalities make a mistake, they'll want to burn the radio station down. Like they are passionate and they are loud. They will tell you exactly what they're thinking. The problem is they're very hard to please. No matter how alternative you get, it's never alternative enough for them. And I made the strategic decision, if we're going to generate any kind of audience and any kind of revenue, we've got to become more accessible to the masses. I was the guy that first played Eminem on the Edge. I was also the guy that first played Coldplay Yellow on the station when it was
Totally logical.
released.
Like,
And
why wouldn't you? Yeah.
honest to God, Pat, I remember staff walking into my office saying to me, if we play this fucking song one more time, I'm going to kill you.
Okay, welcome to Toronto.
I upped the rotations. So we were playing our current music now like 25 or 30 times a week instead of twice.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just brought some structure to it and it made it more of a mainstream palatable radio station for the masses. And they all thought I was nuts. And so did the listeners. But I remember the day where we went from a 2.5 share to a 5.5. And revenues went from $6 million a year to $17 million a year.
Did that basically make everybody quiet all of a sudden inside or not?
It helped.
Yeah, audience, usually is pretty much all that matters. At the end of the day, I mean, that's what, we're there for. And speaking of getting an audience and being a PD, you had 5 things that, a new PD should definitely be thinking about and doing. Let's roll into those right now. So just imagine on the screen right now, there's a one pops up, boom.
All right, well, these are in no particular order, but this first one is the one that I find most PDs have the biggest challenge with. Here we go. It's not about you, it's about the audience. Your personal tastes in music do not matter. And a lot of young PDs have a hard time wrapping their heads around this. I've seen this movie so many times. Somebody gets promoted to program director. Suddenly they run into the phone booth and they put on their Superman suit. I am Superman, and I'm going to fix all the problems this radio station has. I'm going to get into everybody's job, and I'm going to do their job for them, and I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to put my stamp on the station. I'm going to do all these things. And all you end up doing is driving your people crazy. And sometimes the station gets too cool for the room because you're doing it for yourself and for the people inside the station and not the audience. Yeah. So learn who the audience is. What are their likes? What are their dislikes? Are they married? Do they have kids? How much money do they make? What do they do on weekends? What are they watching on Netflix? Like, what do they do? What entertains them? And then reflect that on the radio.
I remember reading an article when I was in Detroit, and it was, I forget the guy's name, but he ran Brass Ring Productions. So just picture live event. Okay, just picture, that kind of a company, except they covered the entire Midwest, all of the Midwest, Chicago, Detroit, down to Cincinnati, huge chunk of the country. And, and there was an interview with him, and he was talking about the people who work for him, that he lost a lot of money on getting the new hot acts coming in, the new things, because his staff, young people, they were all excited about them, but nobody came to the concerts. And he changed the way he was doing business. He wouldn't book anyone unless he saw them either be talked about on TV or they showed up, as they were that TV act at the end of Jimmy Kimmel or something where they sort of had crossed over. Then he would book them, and then people would show up, and he would he would put the appropriate venue given whatever their size was, but he stopped losing money. I thought, wow, that's a really interesting way of looking at that, because he's sort of in the same arena.
He learned to play the hits.
Yeah.
The audience what they want. Yeah. The other thing that this does is when you think about the audience, it gets you out of that trap of working with talent. Sometimes when young PDs work with talent for the first time, they get intimidated. And if the morning show has been doing the show for any amount of time, they'll look at a young PD and they'll say something like, well, how can you critique my show? You've never even been on the radio. How do you know what we should be doing? And if you keep things focused on the audience, your answer should be something like this. What I'm about to tell you is not based on my personal feeling. It's based on what I know about the audience and what they want from your show. So let's work together to satisfy the audience. You're not doing your show for me. You're doing it for the audience. And I know the audience and you know the audience. So let's create better content for them.
Research really helps in that, because you have something to point to. That's a third party that's irrefutable, so you would get less pushback. Yeah. Number two. Talent is your number one priority. Amen.
Always remember that, because as a PD, you get pulled in so many directions. The manager, your ops manager, your GM, if there is such a thing anymore, wants you in the sales meeting. Or they want you in a budget meeting. Or you got to go do this, you got to do that. And very often, the air checks or spending time with the talent falls to the bottom of the list. And Pat, to this day, I talk to talent who say, I haven't had any feedback from my program director in 2 years. That to me is criminal,
Hmm.
that we're expecting these people to do good jobs and drive ratings and drive revenue, yet we're not spending any time helping them. You have to spend a lot of time with them. You've got to build a relation of trust with them so that you're a team. You've got to support them. How many
Hmm.
times does this happen? You get a complaint to the radio station. The listener says, "Oh, I can't believe that Johnny said that about such and such." And you end up taking the side of the listener who you've never even met before you talk to the talent about what actually happened.
Yeah,
There's no faster way of killing a good relationship than doing that,
absolutely. Yeah, I would
right?
never do that. Yeah, I guess, and you may think that way, and I think that way because we were jocks. So you can, you can have empathy for them on the air. When I had Jerry Forbes when I was in Calgary with the rock station, man, I used to get calls. Well, you probably had the same thing with Blondell.
Oh yeah.
A zillion calls every day, and you're just like, thank you, man. This has been great, and then just go about your business.
But but I would say to Dean, listen, here's some of the feedback we're
Yeah.
getting about what you said. How do you think we should handle this, Dean? How
Mhm.
should we handle these complaints? Let's work together because I've got your back.
And I think we've all had, and I'm just assuming you had them too, where you want to do an air check session with somebody because it's going to be good for them. And I found it happened a lot with talk show hosts. They don't really want to have an air check session. You know what I mean? They just don't really.
And you know
Uh,
what? In
they,
some
they, they
ways,
they don't like hearing themselves. They don't, they're fidgety, they're squirming. All of the above.
you know where that comes from, though? It's because they've had bad experiences with air checks in the past. They've probably had managers that don't know how to do them,
Yeah,
that leave them deflated, that do nothing but criticize.
yeah,
Why would you want to go through a session like that? That
yeah.
person, when they come in, they should leave. They should have the attitude of, I can't wait to get back in the studio. Too many announcers have been abused verbally in air checks. Why would you want to do that? I agree with them. Number three, you as the program director set the tone for the radio station. If you're walking around and having fun in the hallways, if you're a cheerleader, if you're slapping people on the back, if you're working well with the sales guys, if you've got a smile on your face, if you come with your game face on every day, that radio station will succeed because people will want to be there. But if you walk around with a scowl on your face and it always looks like something's wrong, people are going to start to think, oh my God, what's going on? Oh my God, ratings must be bad. Oh my God, we're flipping formats. Oh my God, this is going to happen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Program directors set the tone. So if you want a fun place to work and if you want a positive culture, it's up to you to set that.
I wonder how hard that is to pull off now versus ages ago, 20 years ago. That's I mean, every radio station was like sort of like a madhouse,
I'm not,
and it
I'm not
was
so
fun to
sure.
be in it.
I'm not so sure it's about corporate. It's more about just the sheer number of people that are in a radio station these days. You walk into some radio stations, it's like going into a morgue. The radio's not even on. You walk by control rooms, there's nobody in there because it's voice tracked half the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Number four.
Never say yes, never say no. Use my favorite word, which is how.
Good one.
How is the best word you can ever use because it guarantees you'll never be known as Dr. No. How many program directors do we know that become Dr. No? No,
Doctor.
we can't do this. No,
Yeah.
we can't do this promotion for your client. No, we won't play this record. No, we can't do this remote. No, we can't do this. You don't want to be known as Dr. No as the program director. You want to be known as the how guy. How can we do this? When a sales guy comes into your office and says, Pat, I've got a client and he wants to give away Depends undergarments on the morning show tomorrow morning. And I kind of told him we could do it. So when do you think we could do it? Instead of saying, Pat, are you out of your fucking mind? No, we're not doing that. It's much better to say, based on what you know about our radio station and our brand and our audience, they're 35-year-old men who like rock music. How do you think we can give away Depends undergarments? Help me through this, Mr. Sales Rep. How do we do this? And 9 times out of 10, they'll go, yeah, I get your point. okay, never mind. Sorry to bother you, right? And
Yep.
how demands that people give you input, how demands that you work as a team, right?
Yep.
Everybody wants to have input. That's why we get out of bed in the morning and go to work, because we want to go in and feel like we have a say in what's going on. We want to feel like we have a voice, that our ideas are going to be used. And if you get together with your people and say, all right, the fall ratings are coming. How do we generate more audience? What do we need to do? Now you're creating a positive team instead of just demanding that they execute based on your vision.
Let me go back to the sales rep for just 1 second. Would you, as a PD, if you were going back then, if you could just put yourself back in the those shoes, what ages ago, would you, or would you tell people if you're a PD to go out on sales calls with reps?
Oh, it's yes. And it's one of the things I think we should be doing today. Talent should be going on sales calls, because who can talk more passionately and more knowledgeably, if that's a
Right.
word, about the product than the people who are on the air, right? And if
Yeah.
I'm the owner of Pete's Hammer Shop and suddenly the big high profile morning person comes into my shop, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I want to talk to them, because that's a star that's in my business now. And
Yeah.
I'm much more, the chances of getting me to be part of your show or your radio station are much greater. In 2021, I don't know any talent that doesn't want to make more money.
Yeah.
And I don't know any radio operation that doesn't want to drive more revenue. So why not use all of the tools in our toolbox? And that includes the high profile personalities. Pay them a base salary and give them commission.
That's the big one.
It's a win-win.
It is, but that would probably be the wall you would run up against.
But honestly, Pat, if we don't start to think differently about how we're doing some stuff, we're dead.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you something that happened many years ago, and I was lucky enough to see it, which is exactly what you're talking about. I had a morning guy who we got over from another radio station, a guy named Dick Purton. He's a Marconi winner. I mean, Dick Purton is like one of the best morning people ever. And I think he was number one or top three in the Detroit market for, I don't know, probably 40 years straight or some ridiculous amount. But when I was just a jock at the time, and then later I became the PD, and Dick was there. But the way he got paid, in addition to his salary, he got paid, I forget the exact total, but let's just say he got like 10% of all the spots on the morning show. He got paid a percentage of the spots on the morning show.
That's very innovative. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, and you're talking mid 70s here. I mean, which was really pretty interesting. But here's the thing, and if you're a jock right now and you're watching this, bear this in mind for your own longevity and your own, not getting blown out at the next purge, so to speak. When Purton came over, about $1 million came with him. I mean, it crossed the street with him because he had already built those relationships. United Airlines, there was furniture stores, there were other things. They were friends with him, and they didn't really buy the numbers so much as they bought him. It was their buddy. And same thing when he left, the money went right with him. So picture yourself, or just picture your general manager wherever you're working. If you're a jock right now, if they let you go and $1 million drops off that bottom line, do you think that they're going to touch you? Not in a million years.
Great.
Yeah, and in addition to being friends with him, he really worked it. I thought he was an incredibly awesome business guy, really smart guy. He had his own lawyer back then, agent, when nobody did that. But what he would do is, so say the United Airlines thing, if they were doing a charity event for free, he'd be the MC.
Oh,
He'd go MC it for them. So he really intertwined himself with those companies. So
I've been lucky to have worked with a number of those people over the years. John Derringer,
John does that too. Yeah.
Still is a master at that. Willie Percy out on Rock 101 in Vancouver is really good at that. I mean, there's many examples of people or talent that understands the business model.
And they're rare. You're lucky. I've only seen one.
Here's the other thing. Most big name talent is willing to do it because they're experienced enough to understand it. Sometimes the program director is afraid to ask them. And it goes back to how. John, the Harley Davidson dealership loves your show and they know you ride motorcycles. And we want to create a stronger relationship with them. How can we do that? Knowing John Derringer the way I do, he'd be the first one to say, well, why don't I drop by the dealership and say hi to the guy? Why don't they give me a bike for a month and I'll figure out a way to work it into the content of the show or something? Sometimes we just have to ask. Number 5 is listen more than you talk.
Yeah.
Listen more than you talk. Here's what I've discovered over the years. When I'm talking, I'm not learning anything new. When I'm talking, it gives the people that I'm talking to the impression that I know it all. When I actually sit back and listen, it shows them that I'm engaged with them. It shows that I care about them and their ideas. There's a lot of good people that you're working with that have great ideas. And just because they have a different opinion doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means it's a different opinion.
Let me switch gears just a little bit, because I noticed on your thing that I'm just sort of curious more than anything.
Yeah.
You came up from the programming realm. You were a GM, okay, and you were a national PD, and I've known a lot of other PDs who became general managers, assuming the same amount of money. And somebody says, pick one or the other. You could have either job. Which one would you pick? Just curious.
PD, hands down.
Yeah, I think most PDs would do that. Yeah, it's probably the best job almost in
But here's why.
in radio.
I love being in the brainstorm sessions.
Yeah.
I love, working with the talent. And when you become a general manager, you have to remove yourself from all of that because you now have program directors to do that. And you have to support the PDs. You can't insert yourself in that. Otherwise, you're undermining the program director. It's part of the learning process. And as a GM, I always felt part of my role was to help teach a program director how to be better. And sometimes you need to let them make mistakes in order to learn. And sometimes just because you would do it this way and they're going to do it that way, it doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong. You just have to make sure that you're both on the same page regarding the final result. You need to make sure you both know what the end result looks like, then support them. Even if it's not the way you would do it, that's okay. Allow them to do it their way because that builds confidence and that builds a positive relationship between you and the PD and allow them to have some ownership.
I used to love that, somebody come in with something different and like, ooh, I haven't heard that before. Or I haven't seen that before. Absolutely. Let's talk that through. And and it usually for most of them, it would end up being, okay, I have no idea if this is going to work or not, but I'm really curious to see. Let's take the shot. We can always fix it later. Go ahead, do it. I used to love doing that. I don't know if that's it's just part of my being, or I got that somewhere from my parents or whatever, but it's like, roll the dice. Let's take the shot. Come on.
Well, it's about being curious, right? It's about being curious, and it's about trying new things just to see what happens. And that's something that sadly is missing from so many radio stations today. There's no surprises anymore. Listening to a great radio station used to be a little bit dangerous. You never knew what was going to happen next.
I think from a creativity point of view, at the moment, Sirius, if you really spend any time on their channels, they do some pretty creative stuff, more than regular radio. Not all the channels, but I mean, on some of the channels, they do some stuff like, ooh, that was cool. Wow. Who thought that up? Speaking of talent, you are in the podcasting realm with your company, beabetterpodcaster.ca. Tell me a little bit about that.
So when I left Chorus back in 2015, I knew that I could continue to help radio stations, but really I wanted to help talent. And podcasting was really becoming a thing back then.
Yeah.
And I talked to some of them and it dawned on me that they have no idea what to do once they turn the microphone on. And just because you can go to Best Buy and buy a microphone doesn't mean you should be a podcaster. They all had a deep interest in something and they thought that they could just start recording and they'd have an audience of 1 million people and be making, 6 figures a year. They
Hmm.
didn't realize that they had to learn the art of storytelling, that they had to structure the podcast in a way so that it flows from a strong beginning and develops the plot and has a strong end. All of these things that we teach radio personalities, it dawned on me that podcasters need to know this stuff too. So, with all of my background working with talent over the years, I thought, well, maybe they can benefit. So I started listening to some podcasters, primarily in the US. I would send them some critique free of charge, and they'd all send me back notes saying, oh my God, I didn't even know somebody like you existed.
That's awesome.
Somebody that can
Great.
help me. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And so I started doing weekly sessions with a lot of them. And at one point, I probably had like 25 or 30 clients, not just in the US, but here in Canada, in Europe, in Australia, in Peru. I mean, I had people sort of all over the globe.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a huge, coming thing. I mean, it's already here, but you can just see that. And I spend an enormous amount of time on YouTube, partially because of the channel, but also, watching people, they'll go from, like 20,000 people, and you look up again 6 months later and they have 1 million subscribers. And, and then when you step back just as, radio guy, and you go like, they're really good. Let's put the GM hat on for one last time here.
Yeah.
And if you were GM and you were hiring a PD, what are all the things, or what are many of the things that you would be looking for in addition to, let me take these off the table, in addition to that, you have a handle on music, and and the basics of being a PD, and, you have that stuff kind of down. So, something beyond that you'd go like, this person's the one versus these other 30 that are applying.
Yeah, and that's sort of evolved over time, my list of qualifications based on how the audiences are now consuming media.
Yeah.
So today, I would look for production skills. I would want a PD that knows how to use TikTok.
Hmm.
I would want a PD that understands social media and lives social media, because radio is only one of the distribution channels now for
Hmm.
content. We're not in the radio business, we're in the content business.
Yep.
And radio is one of the channels. Instagram is a channel, TikTok is a channel, Facebook is a channel, streaming is a channel, podcasts are a channel. I want somebody that understands all of those channels so that we can create great content and get it out in as many places as possible.
You just lopped the age down under 30.
Yeah.
So social media and for PDs that you would be looking at. Anything else?
Yeah. The other one would be the ability to manage conflict and deal with non-performance. The number one reason for business failure, including radio, is management's inability to deal with non-performance. People don't come in and pull their weight, or they get large egos, or they start mailing it in. They become difficult to work with, and a program director doesn't know how to deal with it, so they turn their head, walk away, and hope that it just magically disappears. And it never will. You need to sit down and have hard conversations. It's not an easy thing to do, but there is a process to it, to working with talent and working with employees to bring the best out of them and manage this conflict effectively so you can create a positive culture.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot have good ratings if people aren't having fun in the hallways. It's impossible.
We're over an hour here, which is amazing. And this will probably be cut down to something, but because an hour is going to be really long. But anyway, one last thing, and I decided to ask this of everybody that I interview, and I did it once at Canadian Music Week, and and I got two different answers. It was really interesting. I got the answers before we went on stage.
Right.
Everybody's on the panels because I'm moderating a panel there. And it's all the heads of all the all the companies. And they gave me one answer behind the scenes, and then out on stage, everybody kind of pulled it back. Like, whoa, I don't know if I want to say exactly that. It was really interesting. It was funny. So I throw it out to you. So hypothetical situation: you get a lottery ticket, and it's Saturday, and you look down, and you go like, damn, I just won $60 million. You have just won $60 million, and you immediately go, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 10 million or 15 million or 20, whatever that number is to you. I'm going to throw that baby into the bank. I am not touching that. That's my screw you money for my life, my kids' life, and my grandkids' lives. They're covered. I don't have to worry about anything at all. I now have $40 million left, and I'm going to buy a radio station that's got a good signal in some market that I want. And I'm going to, let's just say I throw down 20 million on that one. So now I still have another 20 million left. And at this point, you own a radio station that's got a good signal. You're in a market that that you want to be in, and all you wanted to do is break even or better, and you want it to last so it's still there when your grandkids are going to be walking through the halls going, this is mine, I get this, my dad left it to me from granddad. What do you do with that radio station?
Oh my God, I dream about this at night. I would run some experiments for sure and try some things. I mean, maybe in 2021, because of technology and streaming services and the fact that everybody has such a wide variety of genres on their personal playlists, maybe it's time that radio can be a little wider and play a bunch of different styles. I know that classic hit stations do that, but it's a different field because it's all gold music. Maybe there's a way to play more current music from different styles. I don't know. But if I owned the place, I'd like to at least try. I do think we need to have focus, right? We just can't play anything.
Yep.
But I do think there's a way strategically to be a little wider and a little more interesting from a music perspective. I would be live 24/7 with entertaining people. I wouldn't have radio announcers and try to make them entertaining. I would find really entertaining people and I'd put them on the radio. And there's lots of them on YouTube. There's lots of them on TikTok. Find entertaining people. I would figure out a different way of playing commercials. Radio plays so many commercials. I still hear radio stations that play 18, 20 minutes of commercials in their morning show. And we know that audiences hate commercials.
Wow.
We need to figure out how to take a client's brand and integrate it into our brand, whether it's through conversations or interviews or promotions or whatever, rather than just running 30-second commercials. We need to get more creative.
Well, let's hope that you win that 60 million. I'm pulling for you. I thank you for doing this. It's great, Dave. And we'll have to come back again and really delve a little bit more into the alternative thing and stuff that you did on Edge. There and what you're doing now too, because I mean, for the people watching, before this, over a couple of days ago, we were talking about, what we're going to do here, and Dave was talking about some of the things he's doing with some of the stations now that he's consulting, and they're like, "Ooh, that's a different kind of format. That's not exactly anything from the past. You're new territory, distorted territory, so to speak."
We've launched something there that is unique in the marketplace, and the reaction has been fantastic. I think it's got a very bright future, so I'm very excited by it.
Big thanks to Dave Farough for the interview and for doing those 5 skills to make you a better PD. I hope they helped a lot. As always, hope this channel helps. And if you like everything, make sure you subscribe and also hit that like button. It helps a lot. Until the next lesson, see ya!